You know what, Jamie? Let's pop off right now. We got to get started.
We got to go.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's get the people in the chat. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IRSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Ueyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Tuesday. What is the date? Tuesday, August 8th, and we are here to talk about fall practice. Jamie has been on campus since Friday. He has seen, is it 2 or 3 practices at this point, Jamie?
2.
The first 5 periods. 2 practices for Jamie. He's put out so much good content on IRSportsDaily.com. I really suggest you go over there and read it, because that's what I'm going to base this show on, these questions on. Jamie has put out so much information. You know, Jamie, it's really good that I get to do this show with you, because prior to joining Irish Sports Daily, when you would put out practice reports, I would take them in and I would read them, and I want to know what Jamie Ueyama has to say, and now I can just ask you whenever I want.
Yeah, you can anytime.
It's fantastic. I don't even have to have a show. I can just text you. But I save the content for the people, because the people should get to know what Jamie has to say about everything. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If this is your first time joining the show, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the notification bell. I want to get to 7,000 subscribers before the season starts. We've got about 18 days until Notre Dame kicks off against Navy, and I want to get 7,000 subscribers. So if you could, please subscribe to the show. That would really help us out. We've got links in this description below for our podcast. Jamie, our last mailbag, which was I think our longest show ever, hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah,
it had the most listens that we've ever had on a show. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone who has listened to the show, who has subscribed to the show. 5-star ratings don't hurt anyone. We would really appreciate that. And before we get going, I just want to talk about our sponsor, or one of our sponsors, ESQclothing.com, by Ga Wang, who was on our show recently. You can check out his bamboo dress shirt. You've seen him on Marcus Freeman's wearing them all over the country. You've seen him on this show. You've seen him all over the place. You can check those out on ESQclothing.com. Breathable, performance dress shirts, the best dress shirts you're ever going to have. Machine washable, wrinkle resistant, odor resistant, all that good stuff. Don't need to wear a tie with it. Looks good without a tie. There's other styles, right? So there's a whole bunch of styles. You can check those out. So head over to ESQclothing.com and upgrade your shirt game. Jamie, we're just going to get right into it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for calling in while you're in your Airbnb or whatever the setup you have there. Let's just get like a big overview vibe check from Jamie. You've seen him twice. What's the vibe check on the Notre Dame football team before we get into specifics?
Like pretty positive vibes all around, right? But that's how it should be in fall camp, right? I think if I was just going to say compared to last year at the same time when I was here, it's definitely more positive, because last year there were like so many injuries at wide receiver. There were, obviously tons of questions at wide receiver. I think there was a lot unknown about like Maris Leofau. Like it was like, oh, he's not like 100% healthy yet. And that was like, okay, well, that's concerning, because nobody kind of expected that. There was a lot more things that were kind of popping up that were unknown. And also it was Marcus Freeman's first year, right? So I think right now, like everything just kind of seems more settled. Obviously, quarterback situation, that's another big difference, right? Where everybody feels a lot more settled with Sam Hartman as their number one, and that's just been decided. And he obviously has a ton of experience and production. And I just think in general, like even if you're looking at like where like the guard situation is like the really kind of like the only thing that people are kind of, oh, I don't know. Like there's not a lot of other big questions in terms of like personnel, yeah, there's going to be competition. There is competition. It's just one of those things that's always that's part of camp, right? But at the same time, I think you feel pretty good about like the depth at at a lot of spots. You certainly feel great about the cornerback position, the young wide receivers. Certainly exciting stuff just being said about them and what we've seen from them. And just overall, I think like I think I didn't go into camp expecting bad vibes or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just kind of been consistent with what I expected.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's not bad vibes, but sometimes there's just a lot of like, I don't know, it's just, I don't know. There's a lot of questions. Seems like that's not really the case at the moment. At least not a ton of questions, right? Like, or like concerning ones, like, we really don't know what we have on like defensive line. Like, sometimes there's a lot of hoping, and sometimes there's a lot of like cautious optimism. Like, really, I think this could go a good way, but we're not really sure, kind of thing. I've definitely noticed the latter. And so Aiden Curtin, let's get to this one. This is kind of a big picture question. Good afternoon, fellas. Jamie, what's the biggest takeaway from what you've seen so far? Let's start there.
I think it would be that the depth at defensive tackle, like I think that's real. That's definitely something that you felt better about coming out of spring. Certainly, like Jason Onye was a story in the spring in terms of the steps that he took and physically how different he looked. And I think people after Cross and Mills coming back inside and then after Rubio, it was like, well, who's going to play there? Is Onye going to? What's Onye going to be? Is Onye going to be there? Like, is it going to be like, is a young guy going to have to play? What about like Tyson Ford? Like all of these kind of questions there. And now it's just kind of like, well, Onye looks like he's going to be a dude. Like, I don't know if he's certainly, I wouldn't put him at like, he's going to be like crazy impact starter level or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, he's on his way. And then, with what kind of Al Washington was saying about Gabriel Rubio, and to me, Gabriel Rubio, and I mentioned this on Power Hour as well, but Gabriel Rubio and Holden Stays were the two guys that, if I was going to say the guys that stood out from how they looked physically in the spring to now, both those guys were like, oh, these guys really put in work over the last few months and took steps. Because I think I have to say, like Rubio, probably you stand beside Jason Onye, you probably like, man, I gotta get in a bit better shape here. I gotta kind of match my boy here. And I think he has done that. And Rubio looks good. And certainly like Cross, he looks good. And then I just thought Mills, just a little bit kind of what we've heard, and then a little bit of what I saw, just a little bit more violent against the run. Yeah. And that has always been the big thing. He's always had that ability as a pass rusher. It's something he's like flashed ever since he's kind of been on campus. But if he can be more of a force against the run, like that is a very big deal.
So I guess something that, and you just brought it up here, and a theme that's been just kind of hovering around a lot of conversations about, who it looks like is on the ascension, or, kind of like you just talked about defensive tackles right now. And it's really a bummer that, Matt Balis is not around, because I feel like the off-season work that was put in by the roster, it's not just one or two guys at this point. I mean, even a guy like, look at Jeremiah Love, who wasn't even on campus, for a lot of this time, comes in over 200 pounds now. Like, he's over 200 pounds. You look at Brennan Vernon, Riley Mills, Boubacar Traore. I'm just listing guys. Like, these guys are Audric Estime shed weight. I mean, there are so many players who are physically, we just talk about the physical transformation, the freshman linebackers who are all early enrollees. They're all sitting there at 230s. Like, they can play. Jaden Osbury can play at the weight that he's at. That is so indicative of the intentions of the team, right? Because look, like Kyron Williams is a good example, right? Like he was a guy in 2020 where it was like he personally said, I am going to take the next step.
Yeah.
I am going to change my body and I'm going to be a real football player. And, you know, a lot of guys do, but he was he stood out. And I'm just noticing that in your reports, in reports that we've heard from Matt had some reporting that kind of like really went under the radar. I want to say it was maybe in June or May or sometime in the offseason where it was like the players, or he had heard rumblings that the players were talking about like the offseason had ramped up. Like it was a different kind of offseason from a work standpoint, even from what it had been. And I think that's bearing fruit in the way that the team looks, the way that the players look. It just, that to me is like just jumping out on almost every like report that we hear. Because, you know, we hear different position groups and that sort of thing. Every time you talk about a position group, it's like this guy's changed his body. Like this guy's changed his body. Like even Chris Tyree, like slimmed down, like he lost the weight that he needed to in order to play wide receiver. So that's great to hear in terms of the team and how locked in they are. We've heard about that, the competitiveness, and that competitiveness seems to have translated into the weight room as well. Let's dive into the offensive line situation, because I think maybe you agree. I think this is one of the most surprising developments of the offseason, that the position that appears to be settled is right guard with Rocco Spindler, and the one that is in flux is left guard with why can't I think of his name?
With
Shrouth.
Billy Shrouth, yeah.
Gosh, that just totally blanked. The plane distracted me. Billy Shrouth, Pat Coogan, Emil Wagner's been over there. Like they have repped a number of guys at the number one position. What do you make of this whole situation? Like, do you think that read is correct? Do you feel like right now Rocco Spindler is in the lead, at least to start at right guard? And what do you make of what's going on at left guard?
Yeah, I would say right now it's be surprising if Rocco Spindler wasn't the starter at right guard in game one, right? Like just based on kind of how he's been the number one guy for, they're halfway through camp, and he's consistently over the last, like, I guess week and a half been the guy who's come out and been the starter there, right? And certainly, Andrew Kristofic has worked in, but Spindler has been the guy with the ones. And it's definitely a surprising development overall, because I think most people would have assumed that Shrouth was going to be this guy who's going to take this next step. But I mean, it's not something that we didn't talk about kind of after the spring, that he needed, there were things that needed to happen for him, right? Like even when you just saw stuff in the spring game in terms of him like anchoring against the bull rush, like he had problems with that in the spring game. I think he just overall has had problems being consistent, because I mean, that's totally natural. Like he's a guy who's young, right? Like not everyone gets there right away. Not everyone is Quentin Nelson, right? And even look at Quentin Nelson when he was, as a redshirt freshman compared to him in his last year. It's a big difference, right? It's one of the most difficult positions to play, because there's so much that's precision in terms of your technique, in terms of your footwork, hand placement, in terms of knowing your assignment and being assignment sound on everything, adjusting on the fly to certain things that you're going to see from defenses. It's an extremely tough position to play, just offensive line in general, like any of the five positions. So you have to be very intelligent, and it's not about just being a mauler and moving guys from point A to point B. It's all these other pieces that go along with it. So and I think with Shrouth, I've only watched very tiny bit of him. Obviously we had the 2 5 period days, but we got to see a little bit more of him, and obviously he was with the twos that day, but just when I saw him, and he was working with Tosh Baker in like a duo kind of thing, on the left side with Baker at left tackle. And it's just a consistency thing with him that isn't there yet, where you can see, Rudolph would praise him for one rep, and then he would, have to get on him and coach him for another rep, right? And I think you could see he's the best athlete out of the guys competing at that job. We didn't see Wagner. I mean, I would say Wagner is comparable or even better athlete than him, but I'm just saying out of like him and Coogan or like Kristofik, he's a better athlete than those guys. I would just say that it's not about just upside. Like, I mean, it's who's going to be ready now. And the thing is, just because even if he's not ready for Navy or whatever, that doesn't mean he won't be ready for Ohio State or even later in the season too, or that they might not split that position. Look, they're trying to find the best possible thing. I think it's a lot easier when it's just one position. If right guard wasn't settled as well, I would say you would have a lot more to worry about, in terms of like Notre Dame fans just kind of worrying about like, what's the line going to be, whatever. But if there's still a competition at one of the spots, that's okay. If you got kind of like one of the other spot, like, which sounds like it's pretty settled. I think Coogan, I mean, it's not surprising to me that Coogan is kind of competing there because one, he's a lunch pail type of kid. He's super hard nosed, a guy who's going to kind of bring it, very physical. You kind of see that pop from him all the time. It's just that he isn't naturally the biggest guy and he's not the best athlete. He's like I would say a bigger Trevor Ruland is the way that I would kind of describe him. Certainly that was the one thing with Trevor Ruland. If Trevor Ruland was bigger, then he probably could have been, multi-year starter, right? Yeah. Right. So I think, Coogan certainly, he's in the mix. And the thing is, that Kristofik can play. Like Kristofik maybe isn't ever going to be an All-American type or a guy who plays in the NFL, but he started and played like pretty well. So, he's there. And then the other thing is like Emil Wagner is a good player. He's a good player. I think you just worry about like obviously his size, and then he's got the lack of experience and stuff too. And then all of a sudden, he's working at right tackle and he's working at left guard. Like it's a lot to know and all that and to pick up on. So I guess we'll just kind of see. We're going to get like a full practice here later today. So that'll be interesting to kind of see where it's at. But I think I would say everything's on the table as of right now. And then we'll kind of see where they're at by the end of the week and kind of where they're at. Cause I think with the first month of the season, everybody's expecting, because the competition in general, it's easily not the hardest that Notre Dame has had in the first 4 games, but you're going to play Navy. You're going to see like a ton of cover zero blitz. You're going to get NC State, which is going to blitz the house a ton too. I mean, I don't even know. I haven't even really looked at Tennessee State's defense, but I'm going to guess they're going to try to be super aggressive as well because they can't play like base against Notre Dame and then just get smoked. So, and then, I mean, the same thing too. You're looking at teams that are probably going to be desperate, taking chances, and they're going to hope, kind of similar to what that Ball State situation where they were doing all kinds of different things that they hadn't really shown before. So you got to be ready, and you have to have somebody there that you're going to feel confident in. So I think obviously this next week here is going to determine a lot. Yeah.
I think what are they at? Practice 13, 14 coming up, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
By this point, they've got to really start like, okay, this is what we want to do as you break camp, because it just, that's the way it works, like everyone's had enough film to look at and just like, hey, there's enough time to evaluate and that sort of thing. So much has happened beyond our view. So I think that'll start to show itself. So we're going to be talking again tomorrow, everybody, by the way. We're going to be probably around the same time tomorrow, actually. if that's okay with you, Jamie. So we'll be talking about what you saw at the practice, and that's going to be a huge show. I'm going to have so many questions about that. And I think the offensive line is one that really everyone's going to be clued in on. Another one is wide receiver. I think, we had a question in the chat. Let me try to find it. Someone was asking who the first three wide receivers would be. If I had to guess, I would say Thomas, Tyree, and Tobias. That would be my guess.
That would be my guess too.
Yeah. I think that's where they're going to go with it. It's you can't. The chatter about Rico Flores, and you were talking on Power Hour about how telling it was when that practice, when they did the goal line stuff, with the video, and Freeman was, going after the team at the beginning. And I think you kind of know exactly what that is. You've been on a bunch of teams. I've been on a bunch of teams where I imagine that either the practice before wasn't his favorite, or the practice before was like super physical, and he had an idea in his head like this could be a moment where the team just kind of mentally is down a little bit, not down, but just like they're going to have a little lull in their energy. And so he started a practice. He went after them and he challenged them like winner and loser. And he made it very competitive in the beginning, I think, to kind of like ramp up, like, no, we're not taking a break here. Like we're going. So that's what I imagine what happened. In that period, they did 1v1. They called out players with the whole team watching to do goal line stuff. Tobias gets called out. Jaden Thomas gets called out. Rico Flores gets called out against Jaden Mickey. See, here's the thing.
Well, they went 1, 2, 3. Tyree was third too. So that, I mean, if it returns with the 1, 2, 3,
right? Yeah.
I mean, if you want to read into that, you can read it
for sure. But like the fact that you put Rico Flores against Jaden Mickey, who by all accounts, Jaden Mickey's also having a good camp. You put a freshman against him, like that's indicative, like that sort of thing kind of shows like that's how they feel about him. Same thing with Jaden Greathouse. So, where is Deion Colsley in this, by the way? Because you pointed it out too. I mean, that's strange to me. Like, who is the backup boundary? Who is that?
I think he is the backup boundary, and I've heard he's like been fine.
Okay,
camp. All right, so I want to clarify that because I heard after kind of like I was writing that like, yeah, he's been fine. Like he's going to play this year.
Okay,
he's going to play this year. But in case anyone was thinking that this is going to be the big Deion Colsley breakout, I don't think that's what anyone is projecting.
Yeah.
And I think you can read into that setup and just kind of everything I've heard and seen that they're way more excited about Greathouse and Flores, and I'd say Braylon James too, like than they are about Colsley.
Yeah.
And James certainly has, he has so much ability. And he does good things. He's just kind of like Billy Schrauth, right? Like he's not there. He's learning how to play wide receiver at a high level. And it's like, Flores and Greathouse, they already took calculus in high school before they came to university, right? Like they have polish. They have polish that is extremely rare for true freshmen. And they obviously benefited from being on campus in the spring. And you've seen both those guys take a jump from the spring too. But even in the spring, they had that too. And that was always something that, we had talked about how they were guys who were going to play early because they just had an understanding of how to be a receiver, how to set up defensive backs, how to properly run routes, footwork, consistency with hands, just things that projected well for them to play early. And then I think they've kind of delivered on that kind of promise. And if anything, over delivered. Like, those guys look really good. And the buzz about them is very strong. When you ask, some of these other players about like, oh, who has impressed you? I mean, Jaden Greathouse gets brought up a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's just not normal for a freshman, right? And like, I'm trying to think back to, so I've been doing this since 2015, and I mean, him and Flores, I would say, are easily the most ahead that I've seen out of freshmen during that time. I can't recall another freshman wide receiver who were in the same class in terms of like just all the details of playing wide receiver, that it's clear that those guys have, compared to, say, like, I mean, EQ, certainly he was a guy who flashed when he was in 2015. Yeah. He flashed a lot in camp, and it was like, oh, you could be excited about him, and people were excited about his potential, but he wasn't there yet. Like, he wasn't going to be a guy. I think if he was more ready, then he would have even played a little bit more than he did, right? Certainly blocked the punt that year against USC. That was pretty big, but just those guys. And then I think also too, just the need, obviously, because it was not a great situation at receiver. So, I mean, these guys are getting the opportunity and they're taking advantage of it, and they look good, and they're going to play this year, and they're going to help the team.
They're so like professional.
Yes, that's the best way to call it.
Like, that's the thing. They are so cognizant of all the little things. That's so surprising. Like, as any freshman coming in, like you because you don't, you're trying to just be competitive, and those guys are clearly, like, the way that they run routes, like Jaden Greathouse, he is a good route runner. Like, there was a clip that Kevin Sinclair of Irish Illustrated put up. He was doing goal line, and he was doing red zone one-on-ones with Ramon Henderson, and he's in the slot, and he runs an in route, and the way that he sets up the route with like 3 different type of moves, but it doesn't take a long time. Right at the top, like, he gives a little stick and he like fake like he's going out and comes back in. Ramon Henderson does like a really good job, but he just separates because of the way, like, his movements, like, that is so advanced and it's so difficult to cover. And that's why, like, people, like, there's a lot of like Amon-Ra St. Brown to that. Like, St. Brown is probably a little bit more explosive than Greathouse is, but that's that type of feel, that type of ability there. That's why I didn't understand, like, not to get on rankings, but like, he broke records in Texas, playing for the top program in the state, like in Texas. It's not like it was Montana, it's not what that was. So he's obviously really good.
Well, I could totally, this is what it is. People care more about projectable track stuff than they do playing football.
Well, and so then they want to project it onto the NFL.
Yeah,
it's like,
but we're playing college football.
Yeah, here. I don't. So, yeah.
And I'm not saying it's not important or it's not useful. It's absolutely useful. You use it because you're trying to recruit guys to play in the NFL, because those are the guys that are going to help you win, obviously, right? But I mean, Jaden Greathouse and Rico Flores both. I mean, they certainly look like guys who are going to play in the NFL one day. I don't know if they're going to be first round picks, but they look like guys who can play in the NFL.
Yeah.
They're going to develop into that. And I don't know, they didn't run a 200 meters in the right amount of time, or they ran, or they didn't high jump high enough, or they didn't even run track at all, or whatnot, or they didn't run a 40 at a camp, so they didn't have a verified time. But ball is ball, and I mean, in the end, being good at football should be like the highest percentage of it, and that's always been a problem with me with a lot of this, because it's just like, even saying like, you can't say that Tavon Coney was like, man, they really screwed up with giving him a 4-star ranking. I mean, the guy was a stud. I don't care that he didn't get drafted by the NFL. He was an awesome college football player. And that part of it like has to matter for something. That has to matter for something. So, I mean, I think in the end, you're going to look at, I don't know, like, I'm not saying that Jane Greathouse and Rico Flores are going to be like just these unbelievable All-American types, but they're going to be very good players for Notre Dame. They're they're going to contribute this year. There's going to be a point in time when that is wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 for Notre Dame. And like, which means they're going to catch a lot of footballs. They're going to have a lot of production. They're going to be the best friends of the quarterbacks throwing to them, because those guys can play and they can get open, and they have all these other things in addition to just being like, they're good athletes too. I don't want to just knock their athleticism, because they're good athletes, but it takes more than being a good athlete to be a good wide receiver. And they have a lot of those other things already that are far advanced compared to most freshmen.
Do you have a Tobias take?
I mean, Tobias, I think I didn't get. It was totally unfortunate, of course, because the whole thing has been like, well, we want to see it in practice with him, and he was the first guy up. But it was like, normally they don't do like okay, we're gonna do like red zone 1-on-1s. Like, everyone was rushing over to see, when it was going over, because where the media was situated, we couldn't see at that time. So everyone kind of moved over, and you missed Tobias's rep. Hey, he caught the touchdown, right? He caught a touchdown against Cam Hart. So it must have been pretty good. And then I watched, because I wanted to watch the O-line on that first day, because I wanted to kind of see where they're at with the kind of guards, and then they end up doing like, kind of like working on an inside run drill versus the 1D line. So I was like, well, I'm obviously sticking here for that. So I didn't see enough of Tobias in general to do it, but I think that, what I heard from talking to someone after was that, he's had a really good camp again, and they're excited about him, and excited about his development, and excited that he can be a guy who can be a playmaker for them, because he has, big guy size, great long speed, can separate at the catch point, but he's got the small guy traits where he can, he has made a lot of improvement developing as a route runner.
So I've seen a clip of the goal line route thing, and it's like, whatever, it's one play, but he just has, for a tall guy, he just has the quickest, softest feet.
Yeah.
And it's such an advantage for someone of his size. I'm like, I know a lot of people are kind of like, when are we going to hear about him, or where are we going to see something? I am not concerned about him. He is going to have a moment, probably in the game, maybe not against Navy. He's going to have a moment at some point early in the season where it's going to click for him, and then it'll be off to the races. It'll just happen, because I think he needs that. I think he needs, because the thing about him, just the way that he is in terms of like what I've seen, like body language and stuff, like he really wants it. But it's like, it does have to happen first, and I think it will. So I'm not concerned. He's going to be a good player for Notre Dame. I don't know what his like numbers are going to be this year, because I think, like you said, Flores and Greathouse and 2 tight ends and all these other things, like they might limit the overall numbers, but he is going to be like,
I think he's going to have some games where he's going to make a high impact, and then the other games where he's not making as much of an impact. But I think it goes back to kind of that question that someone asked last week about him, that I think I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he went over that number that I said he was going to go under.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably more likely that he goes under, just because he's not going to be like Jaden Thomas is wide receiver 1. He's going to be the guy who's going to get the most targets.
I wouldn't compare Tobias to Davaris Daniels. They're just different players. Tobias is like hard to comp for a Notre Dame wide receiver, frankly.
Not a Notre Dame guy, no.
Yeah, it's just like they haven't really had someone quick feet like him with the size and the lankiness. He's just very hard to comp.
I think and it's something that I can't remember if I'm pretty sure I've talked about it, written about it before, but he reminds me a lot more of Clemson and FSU wide receivers, previous FSU, like older,
like Andre
FSU.
Cooper, maybe a little
like
bit.
They're just guys that are, they have that that size and that length, kind of like kind of slim. Never going to be huge, never going to be like he's never going to be Claypool, right. Never going to be that. But like, so kind of Justin Ross-ish,
it's taller.
Yeah, just similar to him, where you're like, this guy, there's a smoothness to him that you just don't normally see. And I think that really is the big difference between a guy like him and Colsey, is that Colsey is a lot tighter hipped than doesn't have the same kind of feet that Merriweather has.
I mean, Colsey, show me where he failed last year. Like he just didn't. Every time they threw it to him, he caught it.
Oh, he can play. Like
first downs, he can play.
Yeah. I saw like a comment there about someone like, why is this guy like a bust or whatever? It's like, well, he's going to play. He's going to play. He's going to help out the team. It's just that, he's not the guy. Like, there's other guys who are better than him. And no one would have predicted that Jaden Thomas, when they signed, they're like, man, Jaden Thomas is going to be better than Lorenzo Styles and Coles. Like that. No one ever would have predicted that. He wasn't ranked like that by anybody. No one was projecting that. Many people thought that he might end up moving a defense and growing into a linebacker or something like that. Like, that's kind of what he was. He is someone who just he just showed that he had a lot more there to offer than what people saw from him. And with Colsey, I think some of the kind of questions about him, it's like, yeah, they've kind of remained, and it's like, yeah, he isn't the most like fluid guy, but he can win contested. You saw he had a bunch of big third down catches last year. He had that great, contested catch touchdown as well. He's going to make plays like that for Notre Dame this year too. I would be surprised if he doesn't. You don't see some of that from him this year.
Yeah. Jared May asked Colsey, just a gamer, not a practice guy. Maybe some guys don't like the grind of the sport, and football is a grind. Like, it is, especially when like you have all these people who are grinding with you. Like they like you have just guys who like Greathouse or Flores, like they love the minutia, and maybe Colsey doesn't. And that's like not really a criticism, but coaches love guys who love the minutia. And so if you hear like, oh, Colsey, like we don't love his attitude or whatever, it's not that he has a bad attitude. It's just the coaches like it when you're grinding on like little details. Maybe he doesn't.
Well, I would just say too, like, it's very rare that you ever see a guy who is a great player on Saturdays that isn't a great practice player as well. So yeah, there are some guys that are better on game day than they are in practices. But there's a reason most of those guys aren't consistent or don't consistently do it every Saturday. It's because the other guys who are working, super hard to maintain the craft. And I'm not even saying Colsey's not that guy. I'm just saying that the guys that stand out in practice are almost exclusively the guys who are the best players on game days. And it's just always been that way.
All right. What's going on here? All right, I'll get to this next thing. Holden Stace. Tight end 1?
I mean, I don't know if it's. I think it's. I feel the exact same way that when we talked about it last week, Greg. That he easily could be the guy who leads the tight end room in receiving.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Mitchell Evans is going to play, and he's going to like block, and he's going to probably catch some balls and all that too. But it's it's fairly obvious everything I read that Holden Stays is taking a step, and then I mean, it's pretty obviously physically too. You can just see
there's another guy.
He just moves different. Yeah. And then the other thing is that Raritan looks great. It's just, is he going to be cleared? When is he going to be cleared? But I mean, if the guy can stay healthy, he's exciting. Like he's further along than Bauman, because Bauman is kind of, he's not there yet doing all the things. So, but they're trying not to rush Raritan, but Raritan looks fantastic. I mean, Raritan and Stays in that same class is like, those are two big hits right there for Notre Dame.
Yeah. And if you've got something that you want to look great, what you can do is hit up Vahid Sadrazadeh of VSR Media, and he's going to take care of you, whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or aiming to diversify your growing business. VSR Media will specialize in short and long form storytelling, social media management, website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior and sports photos. Jamie, did you know that Vahid is Notre Dame football pregame host and an Emmy award-winning anchor? Did you know that?
I did know that.
Now the people know that, because that's what I just told them. So contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. I wish that sort of thing was available when I was playing, Jamie. It'd be great. I would put out some fire highlights, but it's for the people. In Irish Sports Daily would like to help you out. 20% off. All right, Jamie, let's move to the defense. Because we've been talking a lot of offense.
Hey, hold on one thing.
What?
Mitchell Evans is much more than a Brock Wright type in terms of like as a receiver. Don't get it twisted, Tyler. Like he's
well, it's kind of hard because like Brock Wright, the professional, like if you're telling me he's Brock Wright, the professional, like maybe that's good. I think that Mitchell Evans has
Mitchell Evans is going to play in the NFL.
He's going to
play in the NFL.
He saw the jukes. Mitchell Evans has jukes. Like in high school, he was like shaking people off the line. Like he's got a little wiggle to him.
Like Wright doesn't have that.
Brock Wright is just like super athlete, like kind of straight line guy.
He's straight line, but hard nosed inline guy. But like Evans isn't just a straight line tight end. Or a straight inline tight end. It just might be that it's just like one of these things where like people thought, oh man, Tremble is going to be this weapon as a receiver because he's this undersized guy. And it's like, well, but then Michael Mayer came, and I mean, they just wanted they were going to throw the ball to Michael Mayer because he was a better receiver than whatever. So it's just that's the way I would interpret it. So no one should be down on Evans. It's just you're up on Stays.
Yep, I'm in. I'm up on Stays too. All right, defense, Jamie. We talked about the D line a little bit. You recently met with the safeties. We recently talked to them. You had a write up on Xavier Watts, who I encourage everyone to read on irishsportsdaily.com. Love the Xavier Watts projections, breakout year. I'm excited. I think if you're a regular listener, viewer of this show, you know I'm Xavier Watts guy, have been since 2021. Where do you see the rest of that situation going? I could see a lot of different ways. So I guess, tomorrow or tonight will be a big indicator of that. But you talked about Big Dime yesterday. You wrote about that. That group came out. You can tell us a little bit about that, but where do you see that position going? Because I think people might consider safety to be, one of the weaker units on the team, just overall. How do you see that playing out?
I mean, I think obviously Xavier Watts is going to play a big role and have a big year. They're excited about him. He stands out. He does stand out, and obviously he stood out at the end of last year, right? And he really showed up as um, the level of consistency as a tackler, as a playmaker, that really showed up, and he's just improved in every way, and it just makes sense because he's spent now, like, last year was his first full year playing safety. Like, that's the other thing people don't realize is, like, he moved in 2021 late, like, didn't work in a camp, like, got moved, midway through the season. So he had one full year of working at safety, but also he had to, like, help out at receiver during camp and stuff too, because they had so many injuries. So now you can just see, like, detail wise, he's so much better in terms of just, like, understanding position and taking control. And he's always been a guy who could tackle well and play the run well. And he's had the athleticism to make plays on the perimeter. So I think people, and Chris O'Leary, I mean, it would be surprising if he didn't have, like, a breakout year this year where he was, like, the best safety on the team. Mm-hmm. I think it sounds like right now it's DJ Brown and Ramon Henderson. Those are the three, right? And Antonio Carter, I mean, it's extremely tough because he's coming in. He comes in June. He's got a new position. He played outside corner. And then so he's got to come in, learn the defense, get adjusted to a new school. He's in a master's program, like a legit master's program. Like, he's trying to, one of the reasons why he chose Notre Dame is because he wanted to get a good program, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he was thinking about off the field as well. And he's learning a brand new position, right? So there's all these kind of things that he's having to go through without the benefit of coming in the spring. So he's just playing catch up right now. But I mean, physically, he looks great. He certainly, like, it was shocking to see him and being like, this guy played corner. Like, he's big. And they talked about how physical he was. Certainly everything that you kind of thought that he was physically in terms of what he can do, that fits the bill, right? Yeah. That fits the bill. And right now it's just, can he kind of make a move as we go and step up into kind of more into a bigger role as we go. But they got DJ Brown there. Obviously, DJ Brown has played a ton of football. He's got incrementally better every year, right? So DJ Brown, sounds like DJ Brown, if they came out today and it was just the starters, they're playing in the regular base defense, it would be DJ Brown, Ramon Henderson would be like the third, kind of maybe even kind of splitting there or whatever. And then Harper has worked at safety. So Thomas Harper, the Oklahoma State transfer, he's worked at safety too. But he's right now, he's the starting nickel. Mm-hmm. So, which means that's like another starter. So
right,
he's going to play a lot. I think, like, I think if Carter wasn't there, you'd feel pretty worried about the depth.
Yeah.
Right. But also too, O'Leary was very complimentary of Adon Schuler. Like,
I noticed that. Like, he and not just that, but the him being, like, in groups, like the where he has is in groups like that he might be a guy.
Yeah. And I mean, he had exciting things. He had very complimentary things about Minich too, but he's been banged up a little bit in camp, and he's banged up in
the spring too. That's
so. But I also think that Minich was always a guy that physically would benefit from a year of physical development, of being in a college strength and conditioning program. So I think that's kind of always been the main thing with him. Certainly not skill set wise. I think he's a guy who could play if they needed him to or whatever. But Schuler seems to have separated himself as, like, kind of like the next guy, or the guy who's running in front there. So I would say that you feel pretty good about the safety position in general. I don't know if, like, you'd say like, oh man, they got a bunch of NFL guys like Henderson, and Henderson has taken this step where he's an NFL guy. And it's not like, they've said a lot of good things about him in camp. He certainly understands the position much better and is playing it at a higher level. But I'd say there's like, if you're going to put it in tiers, you put X Watts in his own tier, DJ Brown and Ramon Henderson in the tier right below that. And then from there, you'd put Carter, Schuler, right? And Harper's somewhere in there or whatever, right? Like, that's the way you kind of put it.
I would say a situation too that we are going to be monitoring is the Luke Talich situation. Monitoring. Maybe not for this year. Probably
definitely not for this year. Definitely not for
like
this
the
year.
Special team situation. That could be a situation.
Yeah, he might play in special teams
in 2023. We're monitoring. Okay. We're not going to go overboard about it. We're monitoring. Okay. That's where it's at. We're going to keep an eye on it and we'll report back on that. This is what I would say about safeties. There's no liabilities.
Yeah.
And I think that when you figure that these corners, listen, I don't want to freak out. Okay. I don't want to be like the guy who's like, we have the best corners in the nation, because I don't know anyone else's corners. Okay. And I don't care. Okay. I've been watching Notre Dame football for a long time. These are some good corners that Notre Dame has. If, please, Cam Hart, your shoulder, keep it good. Sup. Knocking on wood. Keep the shoulder good. Ben Morrison and Cam Hart, these are some corners. You like Jaden Mickey. You like Christian Gray and his size. You like Thomas Harper. I mean, Clarence Lewis is like starting playoff games in 2020, and Clarence Lewis is like, where is he going to play? Like that's kind of like, if you want to know where the position is, like we don't know where Clarence Lewis like gets a ton of snaps from. That's what the position has evolved to. And that's a good spot, right? That's what you want. So to go back to it, like safeties, if you have guys who can just play the position and aren't liabilities back there, then with what's in front of them, that's okay. Like it is, right? Like Notre Dame went to the national championship game with, redshirt freshman Matthias Farley, who wasn't what he became, right? Like he was like, I don't want to say replacement level at the time, but maybe replacement level at the time. Wasn't meant to be the starter.
Definitely wasn't meant to be the starter.
Jamoris Slaughter, like tore his Achilles, and that's bad. Zeke Mata, cup of tea in the NFL. I think Xavier Watts could be better than Zeke Mata was. And so like you can be good with that, right? Like you can be, Jalen Elliott, good college safety in 2018. Went to the NFL for a little bit, 6th round pick, I think it was, or maybe he was undrafted. Either way, he was in the NFL for a little bit. Can DJ Brown be Jalen Elliott? I think he could. I think he could. I could play at that level. So you can be a good football team with that, but you need the guys in front of them. The 2018 team, they had that awesome defensive line. They had that good linebacking crew. And so I feel like that the safeties are not going to be a liability. I think they're going to be solid football players. They're going to help the team win. Do you think that the linebackers are playoff caliber linebackers as a whole, as a rotation?
I mean, I think they have it's certainly the potential to be that. I'm not going to lie and say like I didn't see anything from the linebackers in the time that I did. I wasn't watching the linebackers, so I'm not going to be one of these idiots who tries to pretend that I watched every single thing. That I can't stand when people try to pretend like they.
You'll be there the whole time tonight. We'll revisit
when they watched every single second of every single player in the practice, but they were only there for half an hour. Okay. It's just incredible. These people must be their superpower.
It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, most people aren't like that, just to be fair. But so I mean, I'm not going to pretend like this is something that I'm basing off of what I saw. But I think that like basically you don't need like a ton of NFL dudes at linebacker. You need one, basically. And you need one other guy who's really, really good. And like, or a couple other guys who are really, really good. Like they don't have to be unbelievable. They got to be good football players, right? So does Notre Dame have that in the thing? I'm excited about, like, I think Osbury and Drake Bowen, physically, those are two other guys who took a big step from the spring. Bowen looks just fantastic for a freshman.
Drake Bowen.
Yeah, he looks fantastic.
I want all the stock. I want all of the Drake Bowen stock. He's a dude, man. He is. He just is.
Why does Jamie never wear any gear? I don't work for Notre Dame. I'm not on Notre Dame's team. I don't. Why would I wear Notre Dame gear? I'm not. I'm trying to be objective here. I'm not trying to be super fan. So even though it looks like where I'm at right now is like crazy super fan, but this is not.
I don't. So David, if you notice, I don't wear it either. Well, listen, we represent Irish Sports Daily. You could ask me, like, I should wear my ISD hat a lot more often. You could say that because that's who I represent. By the way, we got to get some Hit and Hustle merch, bro. It's in here. Monitoring again. It's another thing we're monitoring. Go off on a tangent.
Borrow that H&H bagel.
H&H. We got to get hit
from Seinfeld, or
we got to get Hit and Hustle merch. Yeah. We'll do something. All right. Anyway, continue. I apologize.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be excited about this young guy. I mean, Sneed looks fantastic too. I think that I mean, I think JD Bertrand looks great. He looks great. I think Leofau, I'm really excited to kind of see Leofau this year because I think he's going to be used properly. You know, in terms of like he's going to rush the passer a lot more, like off the edge. You know, everyone was just, you know, screaming at like him rushing and crashing down into the guard, like blitzing all the time. You're going to see a lot less of that. You know, you're going to see a lot less of that. So I think, you know, in sub packages, he's going to be a guy who rushes off the edge quite a bit. And you know, he'll have that opportunity. And I think, you know, he'll have a chance to do a little bit more and affect the game more that way. And then I think, like, I mean, Kaiser has gone better every year. Right. So there's no reason to think that Jack Kaiser won't be better this year. Certainly not Walter Football getting drafted in the first round good, but he's going to be a guy who plays. And then you have all these young guys that I think are ascending guys, right? That, you know, that people are excited and should be legitimately excited to see. So those are guys that I mean, frankly, linebackers are probably like, I'd put that near the top of the list of like things that I want to see in this full practice of like, I want to watch these guys and see how they look. But I mean, I've heard a lot of good things about JD Bertrand. Not that it's surprising considering, you know, he's played a lot of football for Notre Dame and been a pretty good player, but I heard a lot of good things about JD Bertrand.
Here's a hot take. JD Bertrand is going to have a very good season this year. That's my hot take for this show. He's a good football player, you know. But there's a lot of polarization with him. He is not like this Joe Schmidt thing. This poor guy. He had, you know, he broke his leg and then he broke his foot or something, and he had to, you know, it's a bummer for him that it gets brought up in this way. But he's just that's not it. JD Bertrand, very good football player. He's going to be a captain. Good football player. He's going to have a very good year. So, not worried about that. The linebacker position, just like going forward, 2024 and on. That's good. There's going to be some dudes like that, and that's before KVA even gets to campus. I mean, there is going to be some serious talent at linebacker. Defensive line looks good, so I'm feeling good about that. What do you think, Jamie? Do you think we did it today? You think that's enough? Anything else you wanted to touch on?
I'll touch on this. Can you throw up that Mitchell Vahalik question?
Sure. Aztec position?
Yeah. So
how does the new Aztec position differ from Rover?
So for anyone who missed it, because this is something that Notre Dame safeties were talking about, and it's something that I wrote about in the spring. Basically, when I wrote about like Big Dime, which is like a 3 safety look for Notre Dame, and it's like Notre Dame, it's like a sub package look. It's 3 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, but that's when I just talked about Maris Liefeld being lined up on the edge. That's like you essentially have a linebacker who becomes like an edge, right? So him, Liefeld, or Jalen Sneed, one of those guys, most likely. And then you have 3 safeties in addition to a nickel, right? So it's the reason you call it Big Dime is because 6 defensive backs, but you have 3 safeties, right? But one of the safeties is essentially like a hybrid linebacker in terms of how he's used, right? And that's what it was, a DJ Brown role in the spring, right? So they're doing that, and it's something that it's unsurprising that they would kind of use it as like a little wrinkle that they've added, because I know they've talked about they trim the menu, but this is something they've added to the menu that makes a ton of sense, just sub package wise, but it also could make a lot of sense in terms of certain teams and matchups that they're going to play this year. Like I'm thinking USC specifically, right? You play like an air raid team like that, but you have to be versatile enough to do that, but you also got to play the run. And the reason it's Aztec, and Spear is what they're calling Big Dime, right? Spear is what they're calling Big Dime. And the Aztec position is that hybrid safety kind of DJ Brown, where you're like, he's lined up on the line, he's blitzing, he's doing all these different things, where he's more of a linebacker type. How does it differ from Rover? Rover is, the base defense linebacker, which is a little bit of a hybrid, but it's more of like a space linebacker.
Rover is like big nickel.
Yes, that's like big nickel, and it's like, so think of like Jeremiah Wosu-Koromoa being there, and like all the stuff that he did, that's Rover. That's different from what, not necessarily role wise, but personnel wise in terms of what they're putting on in the field. And the reason why it's called Aztec is because of, Rocky Long. He's like kind of the godfather of the 3-3-5 defense, and which has like Syracuse ran it last year, Mississippi State. Those are like Rocky Long guys. He was, at UCLA a long time ago, New Mexico, but it kind of, I'd say it popularized while he was at San Diego State, which they're the San Diego State Aztecs. That's what they call the Aztec position. That's kind of, that's so basically why is it called Aztec? Whatever. That's why it's called Aztec.
Yeah. I'm going to address some slander in here just to make a point about Drake Bowen, because I think it's important. And that's why I'm so high on him, by the way. So David Lowe says, I'm not buying the Bowen hype either until I see him against teams. Dude was getting cooked in the UA game, the Under Armour game. Now, this isn't anything about David. If that's what he saw, then that's what he saw.
Didn't play in the UA game either.
Well, at the All-Star game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So here's the deal. Drake Bowen, in high school, senior year, hurts his knee, messed up his knee. Should sit, doesn't sit, keeps playing, plays through the knee, plays through it. He's hurt the whole time. He's wearing a big knee brace, right? He's playing. He's got the thing wrapped up, its sleeve and everything. Doesn't say anything about it. He just keeps playing. People know about it. It's not like it's a secret. Keeps playing. Goes to the All-Star game. Same situation, right? Still messed up. It's like, dude, don't play in the All-Star game. Nope, I was invited and I want to play in it, so I'm going to play in it. Goes there, still not feeling great. Goes and does his thing. Goes to spring practice. He never gets the thing figured out. Like, he just works through it. He is a worker. He just does not. He's not an excuses guy. I've said it before. I said it on another pod. He is not impressed with himself right now. He could start. He would not be impressed. He expects it in the most like uncocky way. That's just how he is. I talked to him. I talked to him for 30 minutes. I talked to him a little bit before the podcast. He has an attitude of like, I have a job to do and I'm going to do it. And that's all it is. Like, it's not that I want to be a star or I want this, that, the other thing. He just is Jay Patterson. Bowen is a dog. He is a dog. So that's all I can say. That's what it is. And so David brought it up, and so that allowed me to address it, because I think a lot of him as a competitor, and so that just bodes well for Notre Dame. So, Jamie, are we good? We good? You want to come back tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yep, we'll come back tomorrow. What we're going to do, same time tomorrow, 12:30 Eastern time. Jamie's going to have just seen the open practice. And so there's going to be a ton to talk about, a ton of the same stuff. So you're going to want to check in with us tomorrow. Hit the notification bell so you know we're going live. Please subscribe to the show. Once again, trying to hit 7,000 subscribers before the season starts. We're about a quarter of the way there, or like we have basically 700 plus subscribers to go. And I think we can do it. I think we can do it to get the word out. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Links in the description below for the podcast. Have a good rest of the day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.